Hello everyone, and welcome. In this video, we're going to work on something very important and very common in English. Talking about yourself. More specifically, how to answer the question, "Tell me about yourself." This is a question you'll hear many times. In conversations, when you meet new people, at work, in interviews, in casual situations. And even though it sounds simple, a lot of people feel stuck when they hear it. They know English. They have vocabulary. But when this question comes up, they freeze. So in this video, we're going to fix that. This is not a memorized answer. This is not a script you repeat every time. This is about learning how to talk about yourself naturally in English. So relax, listen. Let's start. When someone asks you, "Tell me about yourself," they are not asking for your entire life story. They're not asking for every detail. They're not testing your English. Most of the time, they're just trying to understand who you are right now. That's an important idea to remember. A lot of people make the same mistake. They think they need to say something impressive, something long, something perfect. But in real English, that's not how it works. Talking about yourself is usually simple, short, and flexible. So instead of thinking, "What should I say?" it helps to think, "What kind of situation is this?" Because the way you talk about yourself changes depending on where you are and who you're talking to. Let's imagine a very normal situation. You meet someone new. They smile and say, "So, tell me about yourself." In this moment, you don't need details. You don't need dates. You don't need explanations. You just give them a general picture. In everyday English, people usually start very light. They might say something like, "Well, I'm originally from Mexico, but I've been living here for a while." Or, "I work in marketing, and I spend most of my time working and learning new things." Or even, "Nothing too exciting. I work, I study, and I try to stay busy." All of these answers work because they sound natural. Notice something important. People often start with words like, "Well," "So," "Honestly." These words give you time to think. They soften the answer. You're not rushing. You're easing into it. Now let's slow this down and really understand what's happening. When you talk about yourself, you're usually doing three things. You're giving context, you're sharing something current, and you're leaving space for the other person to respond. You're not closing the conversation, you're opening it. So let's talk about the first part, context. Context can be very simple. Where you're from, what you do, what you're focused on right now. You don't need all three. One or two is enough. For example, "I'm from Spain, and I work as a designer." That's it. Or, "I live here now, and I'm currently studying English and working full-time." Simple. Clear. You'll notice people often use words like currently, right now, lately. These words are very useful. They show that your life is not fixed. It's moving. For example, "Right now, I'm working on improving my English." Or, "Lately, I've been really busy with work." Those phrases are very natural. Now let's talk about something else. You don't need to sound confident. You need to sound comfortable. There's a big difference. Confidence can feel forced. Comfort feels real. That's why people often use soft language when talking about themselves. Instead of saying, "I am an expert," they say, I work in, I do some work in, I'm involved in." This sounds more natural. For example, "I'm involved in sales." That doesn't mean beginner or expert. It just explains your area. Now let's talk about interests. Many people think they need interesting hobbies. You don't. You just need to say what you actually do. For example, "In my free time, I like to keep things simple. I usually read, watch videos, or just relax. That's a great answer. Or, I don't have a lot of free time, but when I do, I like staying active. Again, simple. Notice how these answers don't try to impress. They sound honest. And honesty sounds natural in English. Now here's something very important. When you talk about yourself, you don't need to finish strong. You need to leave a door open. That's why people often end with phrases like, "So yeah," something like that. That's pretty much it. These phrases invite the other person to speak. For example, "So yeah, that's what I've been up to lately." That sentence says, "I'm done for now, your turn." Now let's talk about a slightly different situation. Imagine this question comes up at work. Tell me about yourself. Here, the focus changes. You don't talk about hobbies first. You talk about what you do professionally. A very natural way to start is, "I work in," or "I'm currently working as," or "My background is in." These are safe, flexible starters. For example, "My background is in customer support, and lately I've been focusing more on communication skills." That sounds professional, but still natural. Again, notice the word lately. Very useful. Now something important. You don't need to list your responsibilities. You don't need to explain everything. One idea is enough. Now let's talk about tone. Tone matters more than content. If you sound relaxed, your English sounds better. That's why pauses are okay. Thinking is okay. You can say, "Let me think for a second." That's completely natural. Now let's imagine a casual situation. You're meeting someone socially. The answer can be much lighter. For example, "Honestly, I'm pretty easygoing. I work during the week and just try to enjoy my free time." That's a great everyday answer. Another very common phrase is, "Nothing too crazy." For example, "Nothing too crazy. I work, stay busy, and try to learn new things." That phrase removes pressure. Now here's a very important idea. You don't need one perfect answer. You need many small versions: short version, medium version, longer version. You choose based on the moment. If the other person seems interested, you can add a little more. If not, you keep it short. That's conversation. Now let's practice thinking, not memorizing. If someone asks you today, "Tell me about yourself," ask yourself silently, "Where am I? Who am I talking to? How much detail makes sense?" Then speak. This is why listening to real English matters so much. You start to feel what sounds normal. You stop overthinking. Now let me say this clearly. You don't need perfect grammar to talk about yourself well. You need clarity. You need calm. You need simple language. And here's something that really helps with that. You don't need to talk about everything. You just need to talk about something real. When people struggle to talk about themselves, it's usually because they're trying to say too much at once. They want to explain their job, their past, their goals, their personality, all in one answer. That's when things get messy. In real conversations, people don't do that. They pick one thread and start there. And if the other person is interested, the conversation continues naturally. If not, it moves on. That's normal. So imagine this. Someone asks you, "Tell me about yourself." You don't need a big answer. You can start small. For example, "Well, these days I'm mostly focused on work." That's it. That sentence alone gives direction. From there, the other person might ask, "What kind of work?" Or they might not. Either way, you've done your part. Another easy way to start is by talking about change. People like hearing about what's changing, not what's fixed. You can say, "Right now, I'm trying to improve my English." Or, "Lately, I've been working on something new." Those phrases show movement, and movement makes conversation easier. Now let's talk about something that makes a huge difference: your pace. You don't need to speak fast to sound fluent. In fact, speaking a little slower usually sounds more confident. It gives your words space. It gives you space. Pauses are not mistakes. Pauses are part of natural English. You can pause, think, and continue. That's completely normal. You can even say it out loud. Let me think for a second. That sentence alone buys you time, and no one finds it strange. Now let's look at a very common problem. People worry too much about saying the right thing. But in real conversations, there is no perfect answer. There's only an appropriate answer. And appropriate depends on the moment. Think about this. If you're meeting someone for the first time, they don't need details. They just need a sense of who you are. If you're in a professional setting, they want to know what you do and how you fit. If you're talking casually, they want to connect, not evaluate you. So your answer adjusts naturally. Not because you memorized something, but because you're responding to the situation. Let's imagine a few everyday moments. You're at a social event. Someone asks, "So tell me about yourself." You might say, "Well, I work during the week and I try to keep my weekends pretty relaxed." That's a great answer. It's honest. It's human. It invites conversation. Now imagine a more professional moment. Same question. You might say, "I currently work in customer support, and I've been focusing a lot on communication skills lately." Again, simple, no exaggeration, no pressure. And here's something important. You don't need to talk about your past unless it's relevant. You don't need to start from the beginning. Most of the time, the present is enough. People often say things like, "right now," "currently," "these days." Those phrases signal where you are now. And that's what most people care about. Now let's talk about personality. A lot of people feel uncomfortable describing themselves. They think they need labels. You don't. You can describe personality through habits. For example, "I like keeping things simple." "I'm pretty easygoing." "I'm more on the quiet side." Those sentences feel natural. Another useful trick is to contrast lightly. You can say, "I'm not very outgoing, but once I get comfortable, I open up more." That sounds honest, and honesty sounds confident. Now let's talk about what not to do. You don't need to apologize for your English. You don't need to say, "My English isn't very good." You don't need to warn people. Just speak. If something isn't clear, people will ask. That's conversation. And here's another important idea. Talking about yourself is not about selling yourself. It's about sharing context. You're not trying to impress. You're trying to connect. Connection comes from being clear, not from being perfect. Now, something that helps a lot is ending your answer softly. Instead of stopping suddenly, you can say, "So yeah, that's pretty much it." Or, "That's what I've been up to lately." These phrases gently hand the conversation back. You'll hear native speakers use these endings all the time. They signal, "I'm done for now." Let's slow down for a moment. If you remember only one thing, remember this. You don't need a speech. You need a starting point. Once you start, the conversation does the rest. That's why practicing this is not about memorizing sentences. It's about getting comfortable starting. Now here's a simple mental framework you can use anytime. When someone asks you about yourself, think, "What am I focused on right now?" That's it. Answer that question out loud. For example, "Right now, I'm mostly focused on work and improving my English." That answer works in many situations. From there, the conversation can grow naturally, or it can move on. Both are fine. Talking about yourself in English becomes easy when you stop trying to control the whole conversation. You just take your turn. Before we finish, let me leave you with one simple idea. Talking about yourself in English is not about saying more. It's about saying enough. You don't need to explain your whole story. You don't need perfect words. You don't need confidence that feels forced. What you need is clarity, calm, and simple language. If you can share where you are right now, what you're focused on, and leave space for the other person to respond, you're doing it right. Remember, this question is an invitation, not a test. So take your time, start small, and let the conversation grow naturally. Come back to this way of speaking whenever you feel stuck. The more familiar it feels, the easier it becomes. So that's it. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.